So my original vision was for a square layout, something like this, with the rods hanging on the wall and springs up and down, left and right between them. But I think it's going to have problems with diagonal motions. Another possibility would be to have a square grid and connect the diagonals with springs. But I think this might be a little bit tricky to put together. Now there's this other idea, which is to have triangles, something like this. It has a nice symmetry to it, and I think it's going to allow for more omnidirectionality of motion. I think it might have better wave traveling properties. So if we're going to go for a triangular array, then how to mount everything? One possibility is just to have a big sheet of plywood or metal and have holes in it at the right locations for all the rods. But I think it would be even better if the thing was modular, if you had little units that you could put together and create sort of a tiling to cover the space. So maybe these are little pieces of plywood cut into a hexagon with a hole in the center, and then you could hang your rod in the center like so, maybe suspend it from above, and these guys can pivot up, down, left, right. So it could have some sort of a hexagonal tiling, but how to join it together? Maybe you have little clips or little plates that help you to assemble it. I couldn't find something that I thought was super ideal until I realized, maybe we can have little bars that go along to connect hexagons on the edge. And so I drew out some bars here, and you can see each one sort of skirts along the zigzag edge between a row of hexagons. And then, guess what I saw? The rods themselves form a beautiful triangular lattice. It's a triaxial weaving pattern. And so that's what you have right here. So my best idea at this point is to have each of these lines done in a thin strip of wood, and they can all mate together and form sort of a trellis, and then the dots represent the hanging rods in the void. So here's a paper mock-up of the lattice with the hexagons and the triangles. I could imagine thin strips of plywood joined together with holes at regularly spaced intervals. All the holes would be the same distance apart, so every edge in the lattice is the same length. But I'm also thinking about the possibility of constructing the lattice in segments. So if I were to construct it in segments, what would be sort of the single module that could be repeated throughout the whole structure? One possibility would be to have, I guess, pieces that are roughly 2 intervals long. So each piece would have 3 holes in it, and they'd be joined to their neighbors with pins through the holes. So maybe I could imagine 6 of these, and they could each form, I guess, a hexagon and arms coming out in a spiral pattern. So if I had 6 of these as a single unit to be repeatable, how would they mesh with their neighbors? So one hexagon would be like so, and then the next one, well, I don't know, there's going to be some overlap because this portion of this piece is already in the domain of this hexagon, so maybe that's overkill. That's more than is necessary as the minimum unit to be repeated. You know, if I had a portion of the neighboring unit worked out here, we'd have no overlap here, but we'd have total overlap here, so that'd be some redundancy there. What about if instead of the hexagon, we tried basing it on a triangle? Let's see. So the triangle might look something like this, just playing around with different possibilities here. So that by itself would be a stable structure. It's not going to skew or shear. But it looks like we have the same issue with the neighboring triangle. Well, you know, maybe not. So we have the neighboring triangle like so. 1, 2, 3. That would connect together. And then this one up top. 1, 2, 3. So this might actually work. With triangles here, here, and here, we've created this 4th triangle here in the middle. So I could imagine, I don't know, what would that be? Every other triangle, I guess, would be this 3-piece module, this sublattice that can be repeated throughout the structure. Okay, I think this is worth a try. So I'm going to make a prototype with paper. Here's one of the modules put together with little tiny nails and the strips of paper. So I'll assemble a number of these and we'll see how it goes together and how the lattice looks. It's looking nice and rigid in the plane, but outside of the plane it looks pretty floppy. So that's a source of a little bit of concern here. My plan for the real sculpture is to have straight edges here. Alright, so I got the mock-up lattice mounted vertically on the wall here. It seems like it's going to work fine. The lack of rigidity of wiggling outwards or inwards doesn't seem like it's such an issue. So I'm just biking home from visiting a friend, and check out what I found. It looks like a set of old window blinds. Look at this. I think that's real wood. This could be just what I need to make the lattice. I'm going to snag these and take them back to the studio. This looks pretty nice. It may be just the right material to build the lattice. Haha! Look at that. Beautiful.